The Brewing Thoughts podcast with Stubblety-Cook.
Welcome to Brewing Thoughts, where ambition meets authenticity. Today, second cab off the rank is Cooper, a good mate of mine, ex-pro surfer, now massive mental health advocate, awesome story, and someone I've admired for a very long time and has always stayed true to their values from competitions and then all now into mental health and been such a strong advocate for that. So for me, and now an author is like unreal. Just add another feather to that cap. So really excited to chat to you. So welcome to the show.
Mate, thanks for having me. It's great to be sitting here in your beautiful apartment with this gorgeous view looking over Southport and Surfers Paradise. So it's good to be here, man. Really looking forward to having a chat, and thanks for having me on as your second guest.
Yeah, I mean, I think like we've spoken about this for a long time, like me wanting to have a conversation with a few people, and it's just something where I'm really excited to chat to those people who I've admired and have really strong values and able to perform in whatever they do. And it might not look like high performance, for example. I think that sometimes that word has a bit of stigma to it. And you're definitely a person that kind of, whenever I talk to you, it's like you're doing it all, for better or worse, you know? So talk to us, like, what has driven you into the Good Human Factory, but I want to kind of rewind and like, you grew up in Narrabeen and grew up around the beach surfing and then turned into a pro surfer and got on the WSL for a couple of years there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a very long story to go through, but I guess it all started, down in Sydney, Northern Beaches. I grew up in a beautiful part of the world, and I guess a big catalyst, and it's good to be able to bring this up with you, and this is what I wrote about in my book, was the year 2000 was kind of really where two major events happened that shaped me to be the sort of man I am today. And the first one is the Olympics, obviously Sydney Olympics 2000. I was 6 years old, and to have the Olympics, the biggest sporting event on the planet, to be 40 minutes from your house is pretty special. And I just remember they being some of my earliest memories, like green and gold paint on my face, tattoos everywhere, going to watch the sport and just seeing these humans who at the time I thought were superhumans. And everyone, you'd turn the TV on, everyone would be talking about these athletes, your parents would be talking about them, everyone's friends would be talking about them, and I wanted to be one of them. So that kind of started, I guess, my desire to be an athlete, desire to be respected by people, desire to win like these amazing athletes were doing. But then also when I was 6 years old, I lost an uncle to suicide. So I guess wasn't aware at 6 years old that it was suicide, but the older I got, my dad explained to me, what had happened to his brother, my uncle, who I'd never really met, but that sort of developed this underlying fear of mental illness for me because my dad struggled a bit as well throughout my teen years. So I was, hell-bent on becoming an athlete and really took that on big time. I was a, good rugby player when I was younger, but then had quite a lot of talent in the ocean and on a surfboard. So I pursued that from like 12, 13 years old and never really looked back. But yeah, it came with some unhealthy mindsets that I'm sure you're very aware of as an athlete yourself. When you put a lot of your self-worth and your identity is tied to external validation, what you think other people think of you, you begin to chase that rather than live to solid foundational values, which it took me a while to learn, but now I've understood what kind of makes me happy, what makes me feel good, and it's not necessarily just winning surfing competitions.
Yeah. Was it a post-career realization that, or during career, or?
I think it was a during career, but post major event, and that major event was losing my sponsorship, losing my support. At 23 years old, I'd had my best year ever on the tour. I was ranked 23rd on the Challenger Tour, which is the secondary tour. So technically I was ranked like 50th in the world. There's top 32 in the world, and there's the next tour, and I was 23rd on that tour. So I was about top 60 in the world. And my major sponsor dropped me. They were like, look, for one, the industry was in a hard spot and there wasn't really that much money floating around. But I was like, I'm trending in the right way. I'm getting close to this dream of making the world tour. And then my support disappeared. I went from making like $50,000 a year, which is basically to the dollar how much it costs to travel the world all year, to making nothing. And that was when this sort of ultimate victim mindset kicked in for me. Sort of like, this is bullshit. There's guys that are ranked lower than me that are getting paid more, and here I am having to go work a full-time job for 5 months a year to support my career.
Yeah.
And I just didn't for a while realize how detrimental that was. And then, yeah, just things needed to change. I was just unhappy and just had this sort of warped view on, like, I deserve more than I am. And my dad always told me growing up, like, life's about appreciation, not expectation. Appreciation, not expectation. And I always just thought he was a scab when I was younger, but now I know he was like teaching me the most valuable lesson, like focus on the good things and, you know, the positives in your life, which there was so much at that time. I was still traveling the world surfing. I was still ranked in the top 100 surfers on the planet, but I was looking at the negatives that were going on in my life. But yeah, it took me a little while to learn that, and there was sort of a moment that did teach me that lesson. But yeah, anything along there you want to ask me?
Yeah, I mean, like, that's a tough, like, spot that I think of a lot of athletes feel, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to, where it's like a bit of a transition where you have this chip on your shoulder, you feel like you deserve more, you feel like you've worked really hard, and there's no doubt people have worked hard to get there and worked hard to be there. But I think in that moment, I know I've been in those moments too, where you're like, well, life's not that fair, and you just kind of, you've got to look at the positives, you've got to look at yourself and go, well, what is making me happy? And like the question for you, like, I've always asked other people this, is like, if no one was watching, would you have still done what you did? Like, is it for value? Is it for, like, why are you doing it? And for me, like, internally, I've asked myself that question a lot. Like, if no one was watching, would I still be swimming? And for me, the answer is yes, still at the moment. But like, that's such a interesting spot, and like, it's such a hard point where you can't see forward either, right? Like, you're looking to try and get the most out of yourself still and try and continue to progress, but you can't get that chip off your shoulder. And it's when you're really balanced and relaxed, that's when you get your best performance. So yeah, I think, like, obviously that was that'd be just before COVID.
Yeah, this is like probably, a little bit before COVID. This would have been like 2016, 2017, about 9 years ago, when I was like 22, 23. I'm 31 now.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, I had probably like a year or two of that sort of mindset where I was working, started to read a lot more self-development stuff, and started to slowly shift the mindset a little bit. And then I was like at the stage of potentially retiring from surfing, and I was like 25. And at that stage in 2019, 2018, Olympics announced surfing in it. And I got invited. The first one was in Tokyo for surfing. And I just had one of my really best results in my career at the event that was in Tokyo, like in Chiba, where the Tokyo surfing was going to be. So I got invited as like the very last potential person that could make it in 4 years to the first Olympics training camp. So that was like one last little bit of like, you know what, I'm still like getting invited to be potentially an Olympian for Australia, and I'm going to give it up. Like, no, let's stick at it. And one of the coaches at the camp, you've probably heard of him, Ben Crow. Ben Crow was one of the speakers there. And I remember he said, pro surfing's what you guys do, but it's not who you are. And it kind of made me start to like reflect on like who I am outside of surfing, and realize like there's so much more to me than a pro surfer. And then my psychologist, Jason Patchell, who's amazing, who works at Surfing Australia, he sort of then pushed us a little bit further and said like, what are your guys' values? Like, who are you outside of your surfing? And that sort of set me on a journey to really look at myself a little bit more beyond my results and my achievements, and went like, who am I outside of that? Like, am I living with responsibility? Am I like, you know, looking for excuses, or am I looking for ways through things? Am I living with like a grateful mindset, or am I looking just for the negatives always? Am I empathetic towards others? Am I putting myself in other people's shoes? Do I have that sort of awareness? Am I being mindful? Like, am I present every day, or am I just sort of like up in my head? And then lastly, the fifth value that I really focus on now is kindness. Like, am I being kind to myself? Am I doing those small daily habits that I know are positive for me? Am I being kind to others? You know, am I being kind to the environment? And each day just trying to live to those values has allowed me to stop really caring what other people think of me, or thinking what other people think of me, because if I live to those values, then I think good of myself, and that's all I can really do.
Yeah. And my question is like, how is that experience to actually look within? Because like I think a lot of people, I don't know, athletes, it's a very foreign concept to kind of look within until probably quite recently, in terms of how psychology's progressed and been brought into the world of sport. I feel like it's really uncomfortable for athletes to look within and look back and understand who they are and why they act that certain way. Like you spoke about your dad and the impact that that's clearly had. But for a long time as an athlete, you were like, well, that's not like, I need to keep moving forward, keep getting better. And like, I'm deserving of this. But so like, how was that experience to like look within?
I mean, it's confronting, I think, for everybody. I think anybody who's ever tried to do a 10-minute meditation will tell you, like, sitting down with your thoughts is a pretty scary place. But like any relationship, it takes work. And if you want to improve the relationship with that voice up in your mind, you have to sit with it from time to time. So it's been a journey for me, and it's still a journey every single day. There's no destination for, you know, a relationship. Like any relationship with your partner, a relationship with anything, it takes consistent work. If you don't talk to your family for a year, the relationship's probably going to start to fracture and deteriorate. So if you're not sitting with yourself and building that relationship, and you build that relationship by eating healthy foods, by exercising regularly, by getting in nature, by doing those daily habits that we know make us feel good, but it takes taking that responsibility. So I think I think for me, it's not about like, oh, when was that moment that it changed? It was just like, okay, when do you start really trying to show up each day for yourself? But it's a constant battle for me. And that's why I wrote my book, and why I wrote about these different daily habits that I think are really important for all of us to practice. I'm not perfect with them at all. It's just about trying to get back on that horse, get back on the treadmill, I say, that is life. Because you know, there's going to be moments that are really easy and we can sort of feel like we're slacking off, but then something gets challenging and we really need to lean on those different, you know, habits that at the end of the day, most of these habits that I talk about regulate our nervous system. And that's the hardest thing, I think, with the world we're moving towards. Technology is increasing, our attention span's decreasing, and
Massively.
our nervous systems are just constantly up and down rather than in this state of homeostasis. So I'm just like, how can I continually bring myself back into that window of tolerance, into that place where I feel good? And there's some things that we can do that most of us aren't doing.
So I think that brings us probably to what the Good Human Factory is, and the Good Humans podcast, and all the things you do. So the 1% Club, obviously, for people who don't know your story, you were sparked by your sister's two friends committing suicide and felt that action needed to be taken. And then obviously your uncle as well, knowing that as you've grown up, seeing what that had the impact on the family, but not necessarily being aware of that growing up. So yeah, I guess like tell us from the beginning for people that don't know the story.
Yeah, so obviously, as I alluded to at the start, I lost an uncle to suicide when I was quite young. Then I watched my dad go through a few ups and downs, nothing ever really drastic, but, you know, wanted to see a psychologist. But then my mum sort of grew up in a place of, you know, you're the man, get over it. And she's the most amazing person ever, but that was just how she was raised. And, you know, she's got all brothers, and the men in her family are very strong tradies. So that's how she was raised. So I kind of had this two sides of, I better not ask for help because maybe I'll get told to get over it, which I know I definitely would have. My mum's amazing. But that was just my subconscious feeling of like, all right, well, I better try and find some things to do. So if I do get to a point of challenge, I'm a little bit more equipped to deal with it. And that wasn't really until my early 20s when I started to, you know, lose my sponsor and get into a negative and sort of depressed state. That's when I started going like, oh, well, I don't want to ask for help. I'd see my sports psychologist, but from a performance point of view, not really a life point of view. And then he gave me some advice, in that finding values, and that's helped me a lot, but never any intention to, you know, be an advocate for this stuff. But then, as you said before, my little sister, she actually lost one friend to suicide. I tell that story wrong sometimes from my memory, but what actually happened was a few of her friends had a car crash, and one of them died at the start of the year. And then later in the year, one of the other boys who was in the car crash who didn't die, he took his own life, which is obviously just so tragic. Two different friends passing away in the same year, one from suicide, one from a car crash. And I started to look up some of the statistics around mental illness and went like, well, like, this is a big problem and it's really trending in not a good direction. I'm traveling the world as a pro surfer, living this pretty extraordinary life, yeah, with my challenges, but over the past couple of years, I've learnt these things that have really helped me manage and change my mindset from a guy who would, get on a flight overseas with negative money in his bank account, hoping like, fuck, I wouldn't care too much if this plane crashed. Like, not suicidal, but also like not loving my life.
Just numb a bit almost.
Yeah, just
to it
numb.
all.
It's this thing. It's really interesting. I interviewed a guy on my podcast, this doctor from the university down in Adelaide, about this thing called languishing, which is like you're not depressed, but you're in this kind of like, bleh, like just point.
It's no up or down.
Yeah.
It's just flat line.
Yeah, and that it's called languishing. It's a really interesting episode. This guy I spoke to, his name is Matt Iciello. Really interesting. Anyway, that's kind of how I felt a lot. But I'm living this great life. But then I started to learn these moments, which is quite interesting because I started to learn these different mindsets and perspectives around living by values. And my performance kind of kept getting worse. And I think it was because I didn't really care too much about it. So I don't know if it's like maybe not the best mindset for an athlete, because I was traveling going like, I'd lose and I'd be like, oh, well, I'm like here traveling, surfing, like this is still great. And then I like didn't care as much when I lost. So I feel like
I guess
my
like,
competitiveness, so it's a fine-edged sword.
When you say like languishing, like in terms of that numbness or that like kind of flatline feeling, I feel like a lot of athletes don't realize they're in that place until you either overachieve or underachieve.
Yeah.
Because you're like constantly just chasing a line, chasing whatever that goal is. And then you maybe like you get that goal and then it's like, oh, there's that feeling. There's all the emotion is there. And then it's like, okay, back to it.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like a lot of athletes wouldn't even know they're in that space of like that baseline numbness until they either step away and have a bit of time and experience outside sport, or they actually feel the highs and lows and they're like, what is this thing called emotion like?
Yeah, or somebody brings like a perspective that they look up to and they're inspired by. Like I see you read a lot of books and a lot of self-development. That really helped me as well to like expand my awareness of, oh, like, yeah, you got to celebrate to elevate. Like, sure, I didn't win the event, but like I remember speaking to you when you got home from what was the last one? Paris. And like you obviously didn't win, but you were like, it was just so cool to be in the pool with this, French dude who had this amazing event. Like obviously I wish I won, but just to soak it in that environment, like you were still stoked about it. Whereas I'm sure there would have been a lot of people, and I'm sure probably in a different part of your career, you would have gone, fuck, I didn't go back to back. Like, like
absolutely. Like going into that, there was a lot of pressure. And I never vocalized the pressure. It was just always there hanging over my head, like, okay, I'm going in as the Olympic champion, former world record holder, like, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, there's some expectation, but then, like, I got told this, but I think we've spoken about it before, but my nutritionist said to me, not the psych, but the nutritionist, she said, well, what more do you have to prove? And this is back in 2022, 2021. And it was like, you're so right.
Yeah.
Like, you have done everything you wanted to do in the sport, not in an arrogant way, but in a way that you're like, well, I've proved to myself time and time again that I am good enough, that I have done it. And it's a weird one because it's like, is that a healthy perspective? Because it's like, you're still attaching yourself to a outcome, but you're also like, well, I've proven to myself I can do it. So I guess like leading to Paris, that was my mindset.
Yeah.
And then post Paris was definitely like a very similar, like I was still disappointed and upset that I didn't necessarily have the best kind of lead in, had a lot of ups and downs in the lead in, but I was really proud of myself that I stood on the block and got the most out of me on that day. And that's probably a very different mindset to 5 years ago.
And that's all you can ask for as an athlete. But as well, like now it's funny, like I'm only 31 and I'm on the back end of an athlete career. And obviously so many people in my sport are hitting their prime at this stage. But I'm just like so glad that at least for the last 3 or 4 years of my life since I changed my perspective around living by values, I enjoyed my time on my travel. Whereas I had so many years where I just like was so harsh on myself. And I look back now and I'm like, imagine if I went through my whole career and look back just unhappy most of the time traveling unless I was winning. Because when you put your self-worth attached to your performance, like you're going to have like a roller coaster of a life, which I did for so long. And now for the last few years, I was so grateful to be traveling the world surfing with my best friends. And I really enjoyed the last couple of years of my travel. So like any athlete listening, any high achiever listening, like if you can't, it's a simple one of like stop and smell the roses, or be present and grateful that like I was like, I'm traveling the world surfing. And the guy, like when I was like I had this really vivid moment where it's flipped for me, where I was sitting on the beach in South Africa. I was working landscaping full time at home after I'd lost my sponsor. Well, not full time, but like 45 hours a week, 6 days a week for 5 months a year, and then traveling for 6 months a year. And I was sitting on the beach about to compete with a mindset of like, this is bullshit. Some kid just ran past me with a sponsor on the nose of his board that like I just lost my sponsor from, and I'm ranked higher than him and doing better than him. And I was like, wait a second, like here I am comparing myself to this guy, whereas there's mates of mine that I was with 4 days ago who are still digging holes right now in the stinking hot sun, and I'm here surfing in South Africa with my best mates. Like, you're an idiot. Like, what are you doing? Just be grateful and enjoy it. And it got so much better once I started to adopt those mindsets. But I've gone on a long wind to answer the story of what happened with my sister. So, yeah, I was traveling the world, living this great life, still, you know, digging holes, and had my challenges in my mind. And then she told us she lost a friend to suicide. And I was like, maybe I can go and talk to like some of the kids at my old high school, and if I could help one of them with their mental health with 1%, you know, might shift their life in a little bit healthier space, then that would be amazing. So I went to my old high school back in 2019 and spoke to a school teacher friend, and he's like, yeah, mate, write a presentation and come in and after school holidays, and I'll give you a group of 20 of the kids and you can share your story and the things that have helped you. And yeah, now I've retired from surfing and do it full time between, it started with schools, it's turned into corporate keynotes and conferences, and just, trying to learn whatever I can about mental health. What are the things that people are doing daily that are good for their mental health, and offering people storytelling, science, and then actual techniques that they can add into their life. And I learned them through interviewing people on my podcast. Like I've had you on, I learned from, Olympic gold medalists all the way to neuroscientists to entrepreneurs. I feel like we can learn from anyone if you give them the time and space to share their lessons. And I've just been doing that the last 6 years of my life, and retired from surfing because it got too busy, and it's been a cool journey.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want to unpick a little bit. I feel like you've skimmed over a lot of 6 years, but like, I think hearing your story and knowing a little bit of your story, like, it started at a school, but did you think it would turn into this? Like, I think a lot of people think about dreams and like, vision boards and all that, but I think like the reality is, I feel like a lot of people just kind of run with it. And was that always the intention with like having a go and seeing where it went, or?
I mean, my whole intention was like, if I can help one person, amazing. And then the more I did work, the more people were getting helped, whether it was through the podcast, sending messages going, oh my God, that conversation helped me. Like I've had countless messages from people saying it saved their life. Like it's, it's pretty baffling. And that's what keeps me going. I'm like, initially I never thought it was going to be a business. I was just like, I'll go and do some of these talks. And then the actual school teacher friend of mine, he was like, also, he's quite entrepreneurial. He's like a careers advisor. And he was like, public speaking is actually a very lucrative business. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know. And the more I started doing it, the more I realized, hey, this is like a cool opportunity here to not only help a lot of people, but how good would it be if I could start a business under this umbrella of the Good Human Factory and also help a lot of people. So, it was like, okay, this talk started. It took me years, though. This is the thing that for the first 3 years of the Good Human Factory, it barely made $1. It was about, I was working, packing boxes at a mate's factory for his brand, and then would like sell a couple shirts here and there, and there's no money to be made in merch unless you're doing a lot. And then the podcast sort of slowly grew, but it was just consistency. It was like 100 episodes till I ever made any money from the podcast. It was,
It's
2 years of workshops before I actually made any money from the workshops. But my level of success wasn't by how much money I made. It was always by how much impact I made. So it was very easy to get up and go and do that for free most days for years, because I'd get messages from people saying like, you saved my life, or you moved my life in a better direction. So that's kind of what's kept me going.
I mean, like, it's like a heavy thing to like get a message like that. Like, what does that actually feel like? Like getting a message like that, is that a weird feeling? Like, is it? Oh,
it's better than anything in the world. That's what, I think a lot of my, I guess, drive behind the Good Human Factory is guilt and shame. And the guilt and shame is that I just feel so privileged that, sure, I didn't come from financial privilege, but I have two parents that are still together that love me. You know, I've got three sisters who are healthy and happy and have supported me through my life. I had the opportunities to go live on the coast, to surf, to get supported by these brands and travel the world and go surfing for a career. But then there's local kids in my area that don't have that, or people in the world that don't have, you know, anywhere near that opportunity. So if I can share some of the lessons that I've learned through that privilege to make somebody else's life better, I'm like, amazing. And then on top of that, I also, through the journey of, you know, this looking up to this mountain of success of like, fuck, make that world tour, be a top 10 surfer in the world, then you'll be happy. And I started to like get close to the top of that mountain, you know, top 100 in the world. And I started to look around and realize, people aren't really that happy. And I was reading a lot of books at the time around service and helping people, and realized like that's a mountain that I want to climb. And it's like goes into the cloud that's never ending, helping people. There's always someone else that you can help. So I changed my goalposts, and, you know, feel like the way that I view it is like I built a bridge from like halfway up my mountain and got to use the network, the resources, the lessons, the privilege to make it. And I understand that I'm very lucky to have built what I've built, probably faster than some people do, because I've, you know, got the network of my sporting career, my sister and a husband. My network of friends is quite, but then that's also from me building that network. So yeah, a lot of it's come from guilt, but then coming back to the initial question, it feels amazing to know that you spend a lot of time and energy to learn what you can to then pass it on to somebody else, and it changed their life. It's like,
It's no
the
better
ripple
feeling.
just is amazing. And it's not necessarily me changing someone's life, they're changing their own life for finding my content or getting to sit through my workshop and actually being open-minded to it. Because you know, I can't change anyone's life, people can only change their own life. But to give people the information that can help them get there, it's super special.
Because you're doing what I think in my research, I think I found you'd reached well over 20,000 kids. You've done nearly 1 million downloads now on the podcast overall. Like, how does it feel to start at your old like local school through a friend to now like you're impacted potentially over 1 million people? Like, that is
it's wild, man. Like I said, I feel an absolute big sense of pride that I've, you know, followed something and not given up on it. Like, I feel like a lot of people spend a few years doing something that's not making them any money and will give it up. But as I said, the goalpost was never money. And now that it's got to a point where, you know, I am doing some big workshops for corporate groups and the money is, you know, quite nice if I, you know, stay consistent. But then also getting to, some of the opportunities have just been wild. Like, I've spoken on massive stages in front of thousands of people at big conferences. I've, you know, done workshops for Apple, for Telstra, McDonald's, Amazon, Westpac, Coles, which is so cool. And so often, you know, you get the imposter syndrome of like, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a university educated person in this space, but I've interviewed over 200 people, most of them experts in their field, and learnt the simplest things that we can do. And then I've just learned I just have a skill of communicating a message in a way that people can relate to it and feel with it. So yeah, as much as, you know, the messages are consistent, the best is like every workshop I do, I ask people to give me feedback. And the feedback form now, I think out of 800 who have filled it out in the past year, I think it's like 97.8% of people say they learned something new about mental health or have a new perspective on mental health because of the way I describe it. 98.3% will use the skills that I taught them moving forward. And then 98% would recommend my workshop to more people. So to know that it's actually making impact is really cool. But I think the thing that I'm most proud of is the 1% Good Club. So I'm really excited for the book when it comes out. But I guess I'll explain that.
Yeah, definitely. I love the 1% concept, and I've been in some of those group chats, and you've shown me like the meditations and everything that goes with that each week, and like the work you put behind that is unreal. And like the stuff that comes through, I'm in one of the group chats on Instagram still, and like
you see it every now and then.
You see it, and you're just like, even if you're like, I'm guilty of this, like just life gets busy and you get out of routine and you kind of get in that rut. And you go into that Instagram chat and you read it and you're like, oh wow, like I need to be more grateful, like, and you need to be more present and appreciative of what's going on. Like when you're halfway around the world, like we're in Dubai and people are complaining about food, you're like, mate, some people don't even have food, like,
Yep.
and we're like, we just go through this motions of like not being grateful for things, and like the 1% Club for me is like, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, and I'll explain the concept to everyone, but everybody has some good and some bad going on in their life. Gratitude is just focusing on the good for a little part of your day, and it releases chemicals that make you feel good. It's like not this woo-woo thing. It's literally scientifically proven now to do this, but we need to take the practice. So going off that, I was like, I know the benefits of it, but I need the accountability to practice it every day. And I also knew the benefits of meditation, you know, the way, as we were talking about before, to improve this relationship with yourself. And I wasn't doing it every day. So I was one day doing a meditation. I was sitting there and I was thinking, like, I couldn't slow my mind down. Like, surely we can all give 1% of our day to our mental health. Like 1% should be the bare minimum that we can all commit to improving our mental health. 1% of 24 hours is 14 minutes and 24 seconds. So I was like, 14 minutes for your mental health. That's less than 1% of your day. Hopefully everyone listening right now can agree we should be able to give that to our mental health. But I also knew it's really hard to stay accountable to healthy habits. So I was like, well, what if I created an accountability group on Instagram where I'll send a meditation link every morning to try. So all you have to do is open your Instagram like everyone does anyway in the morning. There's a link to click to do something good with your Instagram. And then every night, when you're on your Instagram at night, click on that 1% group chat that you're in and just write 3 things you're grateful for and read the gratitudes from the other people in your community. And then you get inspired to see, oh, look, everyone's pointing out the good in their life. So that started 1,600 or 1,570 days ago. And I mean, I've missed 1 or 2 days, but I keep the streak going. But yeah, so for the last 5 years, almost 4 years, I've stopped and reflected on 3 things I'm grateful for, and that community on Instagram has grown to over 2,500 people. I think there's been like close to, sometimes I say 1 million, but I reckon it's more than about 500,000 gratitudes have been sent. Like people have stopped and thought about 500,000 things that they're grateful for because of this community. But the thing I'm most proud of, it's free. It doesn't cost anyone anything. All you have to do is send us a DM on Instagram at The Good Human Factory saying, I want to join the club. You get added in. You get the meditation every morning. You get a community of people that keep you accountable. And it's just a way to stop each day and look at the good things in your life. And as I said before, we all have some good, some bad, some more bad than others, some more good than others. But gratitude's just about looking at the good in your life.
Yeah, it's all relative though, right? Like the
Exactly.
worst thing you've ever experienced is the worst thing you've ever experienced. And like, I think we're all guilty of that, and like what you're doing with that. And now you've obviously got Blue Minds as well, which is a different part of it as well, which is, I think, a really cool, because I think like the way you've spoken is probably to more that senior age group at schools, and Blue Minds kind of allows a little bit of a younger generation as well as a different perspective on it. So you want to explain Blue Minds?
Yeah, Blue Minds is really cool. So I did some work. One of my ambassadors with the Good Human Factory is Sam Fricker, the diver that I'm sure you know. He was in Tokyo with you, yeah? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's a great friend of mine, and he started this straw brand called Sam Straws now. I think he's maybe cancelled it. But anyway, it was like this eco-friendly straw brand, and some of his friends who are part of his management were like, let's do a youth ocean carnival and teach people how to take better care of the ocean. And it was aligned with that. So Sam introduced me to them, and I said to them a bit more about me, and one of my themes is being kind to the environment. Something very important to me. It should be important to all of us. And they're like, oh, can you speak at our festival? So I spoke at that festival with them at Luna Park in front of 800 kids and helped them with that program, which was really cool. And at that, I met this guy, Cal Glansnig, who is one of my best mates now, but he's just like the most passionate dude about taking care of the ocean. Very smart young entrepreneur.
Very humble too.
Very humble dude. He just got voted in as an independent councillor for Sutherland Shire Council down in Cronulla. So he's a politician, but he's just super passionate about taking care of the ocean. He goes to the United Nations climate conferences representing Australian youth. He's a weapon. So me and him were talking about being kind to the environment and our love for the ocean. And there's a study that came out back in 2023 with Origin, which is the world leading youth mental health research organisation, over 700 staff down in Melbourne. And there was a study that came out with them in Mission Australia that said 67% of young people have eco-anxiety, like fears of the future when it comes to the climate. Something that I hold. Like, do you? Like, you know, you see shit going on around the world with climate change and stuff. Like,
And you almost feel defeated by it because it's so like, well, how am I going to control any of that?
Well, that was my mindset, and that's really the base of what we've created with Blue Minds. Me and Cal were like, we can either bury our head in the sand because of this report, or we can try and do something about it. So we were like, why don't we create a program where I'll focus on the mental health, the eco-anxiety part, and he'll focus on how to take care of the ocean and the environment part. So we created Blue Minds, which is youth ocean leadership, trying to teach young people how to not be fearful of the future by, for one, practicing appreciation and gratitude of like just noticing how important the environment is, the amazing memories that it gives us, how beautiful, the ocean is and what it does for us as a planet. And then we go on to awareness around the challenges it's facing. We can either bury our head in the sand or we can, really look at the things that are going on that need to change. And then the third A that we talk about is action. What are the individual actions that we can take? What are the community actions we can take? And what are some of the great innovative actions young people are taking? And the goal with that is to move people from this, oh my God, what can I do? It's too big of a problem. Like, the goal shouldn't be to change the world. It should be to change our own individual world. And if all of us start to do that, then the world begins to change.
The dial shifts.
And if all of us think, I can't do anything, then nothing's ever going to happen. So our goal with Blue Minds is to try and just push people in like 1 or 2 degrees different direction that's a bit healthier, happier, more sustainable. And then we end up in a different future. And if we can push more and more people towards a little bit more sustainability, then we start to see a big tide change. So that's what Blue Minds is. And we had a massive first year. We're just moving into our second year. I think we're potentially going to Brazil in November to go to the United Nations Climate Conference to represent Australian youth, which is pretty bloody cool.
Was that a pinch yourself moment where you're like a bit of imposter syndrome about that?
Yeah, I'm potentially going to the United Nations to represent like youth of our country. Like, pretty cool to like represent the climate and taking care of our oceans. Obviously the ocean gave me so much. And I've take from, the ocean like we do from so many things. It's nice to be able to give back.
Yeah, that's like incredible and like it's awesome stuff. So, I mean, like now, like I've wanted to pick your brain about this book because like you've gone through everything of like the last 6 years and what that's built up to. And then I remember talking to you, I think it was last year, and you started mentioning like, oh, I might have an opportunity to start writing a book. And I was like, what does that even, first of all, entail? And like, what does an opportunity like that feel like, where you're like, that's an overwhelming project? Are people going to read it? Are people going to listen? Like, what's the impact? Like you keep coming back to your values driven by what is the impact going to be? Like, it sounds very clear to me that you've gone from, okay, how do I win? How do I climb the mountain of winning for myself to how do I make an impact to better someone else's life in a very philanthropic way that you're almost will happily sacrifice sometimes your own happiness to get the best out of other people.
But it sometimes becomes quite selfish, the pursuit of helping other people in its own weird way. And I spoke at a conference last week and Ned Brockman spoke there as well. And he said that, he's like, because they're like, oh, how good does it feel to raise all this money and help people? And he's like, yeah, it feels amazing. But it feels good because I'm helping people. So it becomes almost this selfish endeavor to help people. But I'm like, I'd rather chase that selfish endeavor because the outcome is people getting helped rather than the selfish endeavor of winning, which at the end of the day, it does help a lot of people, winning gold medals, inspires kids to be healthier. So it's not taking away from the pursuit of excellence when it comes to sport, but it's like doing it with a solid foundational values behind it. But yeah, the book was an interesting one. I got approached by a publisher a couple years ago and they were like, yeah, we'd love to do a book with you, blah, blah, blah. It's going to cost this much. And I was like, oh, I thought like book deals work like the other way. Like they pay you to write the book. Yeah. Anyway, so I was like, maybe one day when I can afford it, I'll try and write a book. I then got approached last year by this awesome lady. I think it was on LinkedIn. It might have been an email. I got to look back and try to work out where it came from. But from Wiley Publishing. And Wiley Publishing have done the biggest book ever in Australia, The Barefoot Investor. Big in business books, big in entrepreneur books. but they hit me up and said, we're looking to get a bit more towards self-development and bring on some titles in that space. We've been following your story with the Good Human Factory, your podcast. Do you have any ideas for a book? And I was like, I kind of do. I had like the concept of my values, the 5 values I talk about. I'd love to write a book about that, moving from victim mindset, moving from external validation into this sort of hero mindset, living by values. But then I was like, and I've also interviewed, all these people and learn all these healthy habits that we should do. And I practice this full potential board every day where I've got 10 habits and I never tick them all off, but I try my best because I know all of these habits through interviewing experts, learning the science will help regulate my nervous system. It'll give me the best chance of having good mental health. So I put together this 1-page pitch for the book to this lady who said, do you have an idea? And she came back and said, like, we love the idea. Initially, I wanted to call it the Good Human Guidebook. And they were like, yeah. And then I kind of explained to them what I just did on this podcast, the concept of the 1% Good Club and this community I've built. And I was like, I'll probably write a little bit about that in there. And they're like, we love that idea of calling it the 1% Good Club because then it's more than just like a pro athlete's brand book. It's more like a movement, like Atomic Habits or the Resilience Project or the 5 a.m. Club, like these books that grow beyond the author. That's where they saw that. So they're like, all right, let's do it. So then, I got a publishing deal where I think I had like 8 months or 6 months to write 60,000 words. I like never went to uni. I'm not a writer at all. And then I looked at getting a ghostwriter and it was like, I got quoted $50,000 or $100,000. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write it myself. Yeah. Had ChatGPT help me with a bit of not idea generation. I'd put my ideas in and help me sort of with a little bit of structure and a little bit of grammar. Because I was like, I can either pay someone $50,000 to help me with the grammar that I'm not that good at, or I can use the great functions that we do have now with different AI technologies just to help with that. Because all I wanted was to get all the best ideas that I've had in my mind, that I've been teaching in my workshops, that I've learnt through my experts, that I've been practicing in my own daily life. Do some storytelling so people can relate, tell some science so people have the trust in what they're learning, and include scientific studies of why this stuff matters, but then also give people the techniques on how they can integrate it into their life and actually move from awareness to action. I spent 6 months writing it. In April this year, I submitted I think it was 55,000 word manuscript in the end. I didn't quite get to 60. But it was crazy. Like the last 2 weeks, I wrote like half of the book. Like, wow. It's a crazy thing writing. Yeah. It's like you get in flows and then sometimes you just have a block and you can't write. And then my deadline was coming up. I got it done and then went through like a month and a half of sort of editing back and forward, changing things, moving a few things around, getting permissions from people whose stories I've included through there. And then I'll literally, by the time this episode's out, I'll have my first book in hand. I'll get my first book in a week from right now, which is pretty scary, like exciting to be like I'm an author. But I think as well, if I keep the goalposts, like if it helps one person, amazing. I mean, my publisher might not love it if it only helps one person, but from my point of view, it is scary. Like far out, people are going to get to read my whole really life and go deeper than I ever have with
how
things.
Confronting is that? Like, obviously, it's confronting, reflecting within yourself those probably like deep inner thoughts, and actually putting them pen to paper is a different thing to just feeling them. But then on top of that, like now you're being really vulnerable and putting it out in the world. Like, how does that whole experience feel?
Well, I'll give you the perfect example. I've obviously got the PDF version, so my family's read the PDF version because they're included throughout. So I wanted to make they're okay with it. My mum read it and she was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were so unhappy." And I don't think it comes across that I'm unhappy. That was just her perspective as my mum reading it. But I was like, I wasn't saying I was unhappy. I was just trying to show that like I wasn't how I am now. I was, lost. I was languishing. I was basing my self-worth in a completely wrong realm. Yeah. And she read it as like I was unhappy. And I was like, I wasn't necessarily unhappy, but I was sharing stuff that I didn't share with my parents. I was sharing stuff that I didn't share with others. So I'm intrigued to see how like, my friends who read it think like, oh, that isn't like you, but it's like, your internal reflection of who you are is different than what other people's thought
Or you're
of
projecting
you,
outwards.
for one of what you're projecting outwards, but also what other people think of you. That's the story they make up. So it was, it's an interesting journey, like trying to reflect on stories that are from quite far back and remember how you're feeling, and then try and connect the dots to make the story have a lesson out of it. But yeah, it's a cool journey trying to tie it together. I'm excited one day to read your book, because I know how sick your diaries are and I wish I did that and kept better diaries, because you'll actually really be able to dial into how you were feeling in those moments. Whereas a lot of mine was, just reflecting on lessons that I've learned now and looking back, like, where did I learn them? And then pulling stories from over the years. Like, the book goes like really chronological, but they kind of like, it's chronological with each chapter then goes back and has its own thing. So, I'm intrigued to see how people read it and how the flow is.
And
yeah,
I guess, like, from that point of view, do you think, like, it's quite confronting, and like, you said, like, that's very kind of words of you, and I do keep like a journal when I'm away normally, and like, I personally like know that I even go back, and I said this to you last time I saw you, it was like, I go back and like, I'm quite confronted sometimes by like potentially like those feelings and thoughts that you've kind of written down and kind of moved on. So like, I can't even like, I look back on some of those diaries and I'm like, even if it's success, it's like a really uncomfortable to even like dive into that experience again. So like, that's so intriguing to me, and like, so I guess comforting to hear that you're obviously very values driven and very comfortable within yourself, that you've come around full circle to be like, no, I can dive into those moments. But it's very interesting to hear like your mum, like from a mum hat on, probably is like, did I protect my son enough? Did I like give him enough? And like, that's quite interesting in itself, that it's like, they're going to have that perspective. But I guess, like, how do you deal with, or how do you potentially think you're going to deal with that? Like,
I don't know. That's one that, I'm pretty good with sort of not really caring too much about other people's opinions anymore, because like for so long I didn't come up with the name The Good Human Factory. My school teacher mate did. And then I didn't realize, like, just oblivious naivety, I guess, that people must have thought that I'm calling myself this good human, like, that runs this good human factory. I'm like, not at all. It's my business is about what are the things that we need to try and do daily to be a good human. I'm not saying I'm that, like, I'm trying my best, but I'm far from perfect. So yeah, I'm intrigued to see how people read it, if they will relate and be like, oh yeah, he's gone through his challenges, he's ended up here. Maybe I can like jump on the wave somewhere that can get me to a place. And once again, far from perfect, but I'm far happier, far more grounded, far more content, and care far less of what people think of me. And I think that's so often what holds people back. Like, they're thinking about what others think of them, and it's like, you can't control that anyway. All I can control is how I show up each day. So the book definitely opens up again that of like, oh, people are going to judge me. But yeah, I'm the only person who has to live in my head.
yeah.
So why spend it thinking about what others think of me? I may as well think about it, ideas that I can come up with that's going to, you know, make the world a better place. It's going to, you know, make my life more fun, exciting, make others' lives better, rather than caring what others are thinking.
Yeah.
But it'll be tough. Once the book's out there and there's thousands of people reading it deeper and more into... But I've also got a podcast where I've interviewed so many people, and I've been on so many that people know me pretty well, and I feel like I'm pretty authentic. Like, there's obviously, everyone's got their private life, but yeah, I feel like I'm very open and out there now with what I do, that people know a lot of the story, but hopefully going a bit deeper might just give them a bit more to relate to, which can then take them, you know, take their lessons into their story, maybe help them on their journey.
All right. I think like it's an awesome like thing you've done, and been able to publish a book is like no mean feat, and like, you know, 60,000 words of your own inner dialogue is like crazy to even like think that there is that out there, and being vulnerable enough to just put it out there is epic. So big congrats to that.
Yeah, I'm pumped. October 1st, the 1% Good Club. You can get it on Amazon, Booktopia, everywhere. You're going to get a copy.
Pre-order it on Amazon, I think.
Yeah,
already.
Pre-orders are open. But yeah, it's going to be cool to see what people think of it. I just think it's like a book that I wish I had, especially when I was a young athlete or parents for athletes. I think it's a really good book just to, you know, take away a bit of that pressure that you feel as a young athlete to, you know, be the best and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, here's another way that you can view yourself. But I just think anyone who
I have two last questions. The first is they're two quick questions. And the first question is like, if you could have a billboard that, let's say, every young person in Australia could read, what would it say?
What would I put on a billboard right now?
Your book cover.
Yeah, if I can get a free billboard, I'd just put a QR to my book. I'd probably put, what are you grateful for? I think just encouraging people to reflect, to have a think. If, 10,000 people go past the billboard and 1% of them think, what am I grateful for? And, there's 100 people who have positive chemicals floating through their brain, like that would be beautiful. So yeah, what are you grateful for? I reckon I'd put.
And then the second question is like one that I know you ask a lot of people is, what does a good human mean to you? Like, obviously I feel like it's changed over the years, but right now, what does that look like?
I think to me, being a good human is living to your values. And I'll use it from my 5 values. Like, think about the person who lives to these 5 and the flip side. So we'll start with the person who doesn't. Person who doesn't take responsibility, plays the victim, looks for excuses. We all know that person. It's not nice to be around that person. Person who isn't grateful, who is always saying, oh, this sucks, or like, oh, I wish I deserved better. Not that nice to be around that person. Person who's not empathetic. They hear something's happened and they've judged them and they've jumped straight to like, oh, what a loser.
What a conclusion.
We've all been around that sort of person. Doesn't listen that well. Is always just like, distracted. Not that great to be around that person. Someone who's not mindful. Someone who isn't present with you. Who's just constantly distracted and, up in the fairies. Not that good. Someone who's not kind. Someone who you see talk badly and talk gossip about people behind their back, or, get angry and get frustrated at someone. Someone who's not kind to themselves, that speaks poorly about themselves and always self-deprecating. Or someone who, throws rubbish on the ground and shit to the environment. You see them, not have... So, to me, if I can live off over those values, that's what being a good human is to me. Taking responsibility, going, you know what? I need to take radical accountability, responsibility for my life. When things aren't going my way, it's because of my choices. And if things are out of my control, I can respond to them in a certain way. Someone who's grateful, looks for the positives, is always, pumping people up, looking with optimism. Someone who's empathetic, even if they don't agree with what someone's doing, they'll have curiosity and they'll be empathetic towards them. Someone who's present with you, sits there, looks at you in your eyes, actually is interested in you, not interesting themselves. And then someone who's kind. How good is it when you see someone do something nice for somebody else? It makes you feel good. Or you see someone, being kind to themselves and patting themselves on the back, or somebody, picks up rubbish and is doing something to take care of the environment. That's what I think a good human is. So as much as I don't do them all every day, I try my best to live to them. And if I do, I think that's a good human.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we'll finish up on that, but I appreciate you taking the time for today, and it's been awesome. So thank you.
Thanks, my man. It's great to have a go on your second go at a podcast. You absolutely killed it. Can't wait to have another chat for you on mine, and can't wait to see what you think of the book. And thanks for everyone for listening.
Too easy. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
The Brewing Thoughts Podcast with Stubblety-Cook.